I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sofia Unfiltered Podcast, where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Sofia Unfiltered episode. I'm your host, Riley Reese, and today I'm talking to Mackenzie Rockwood. Mackenzie is a dietitian and the founder of Citrus Pear, where they deliver at-home freezer meals along with meal prep classes. She started with hospital patients and has now expanded throughout the West Coast. We could not be more excited to dive into all things Mackenzie today, hear about her story and this super successful company she's running, delivering healthy food to people. Hi, Mackenzie. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Can you just share a little bit about maybe your background for our listeners who may not know you?
Yeah, so I live in Utah, and I went to Utah State. I have my degree in dietetics, so I am a dietitian. And well, I've worked in the clinical setting, so in the hospital setting for 6 years. And then I kind of broke out, tried this entrepreneur route. I've been doing Citrus Pear for about 8 years now. I now do it with my husband. He kind of took that leap and we do it together. And then we have 3 boys as well. So,
oh my gosh, I can't wait to jump into all this. Tell us a little bit about it. So, for our listeners out there who may be in the health and wellness industry, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a dietitian.
Yeah. So, to be honest, when I was younger and in high school, I didn't even really know a dietitian was a thing. I knew that I always was really into, nutrition and making sure I was trying to take care of my body and feed it the things it needed. And I knew I loved that and I was fascinated with it, but I wasn't quite sure what route I wanted to take. And so when I actually came up to Utah State, they have a really great dietetics program. And I kind of stumbled upon it and was like, this is exactly what I need. And so the program, any dietetics program is fabulous because it sets you up for any kind of avenue that you want to pursue. So once you're done with the program, you do an internship and you can do things with eating disorders, you can do food service, you can do community things, hospital settings. And so you kind of get to dip your toe in every area and see what fits best. So
it's really great. So you basically started out wanting to make better food choices, which I think is really, really hard today, right? And so I guess that's a little bit of where you got into solving an issue. So you're working in hospitals, you're working in the clinical setting. What was that transition? What was that pivotal moment?
Well, any dietitians out there know that in the hospital setting, it is really difficult to feel like you're making an impact because you have patients there for a short period of time and they're generally very sick. They're on lots of medications and they just want to go home. And a lot of times you are the last box they have to check before they can leave. Well, the dietitian needs to come in and talk to you. And you have, 5 minutes with them to try and tell them sometimes a huge lifestyle change that they need to make depending on, what's going on. And so it just felt like I was barely scratching the surface of what I could do to help these patients. And so that's kind of where the idea started is, well, what if I take that guesswork out of it and I, help them as they go to the grocery store and know what to pick and know what to put in their meals and kind of give them those tools.
Did you start out maybe doing a private practice where you're a little bit more involved with them and you actually help them at the grocery store? Did you go down that route? We have a lot of practitioners on our platform who absolutely do that. Hey, they realize that there's a big issue on what to choose when you're at the grocery store, especially when you have, the comorbidities and you have different things going on and you have to eat certain diets for medical purposes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That I didn't start with that, but that is something that we've over the years kind of gone in and out of. Obviously, COVID changed things a lot, but we were doing different things with grocery store dietitians and grocery store tours and kind of helping with that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. So over time, you just noticed you weren't, and this sounds very much like the physician story. They're like, I get 10 minutes, I can do so much more.
Yeah.
And you're like 5 minutes. And not only that, you're the barrier stopping patients from going home. So you're probably even less time. And so over time, I guess you thought that making food would be the path. What was that?
Yeah. I just
journey?
thought, what if I can bridge that gap between hospital and home and help them to implement the things? And so, a lot of times as a dietitian, you get asked to write people a meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because you can see the value in it, but then you can also see many times the meal plans aren't followed. It's hard to follow a meal plan. And so I thought, well, what if I just help in that area? So with dinners, I help them plan their dinners. I'm going to help them grocery shop. We're going to make a list. We're going to prep, and they're going to have, between 10 and 40 dinners ready to go in their freezer. So that's where it started.
Yeah, that's incredible. So do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of the beginning of Citrus Pear and how you got started? Was this just like a small sample population? Were you getting clients?
Yeah. So first held a class, and of course it was all my friends who came. They were coming to support. And so I had a lot of things planned. We had some nutrition information I wanted to share. We were going to prep these meals. We had like 2 hours set. And I quickly realized that I wasn't really able to get much information in because everyone was having so much fun being there together. So not only were they being productive and making these meals, but they were connecting and they were having fun together. And that brought a whole new aspect to it that I hadn't even considered, but it really has evolved into a social connecting experience as well. So during that class, we made these 10 meals. Everyone had such a great time. And then it was like, well, we have more people that want to do it. And they just kind of, kept filling up from there. And the demand kept growing. And we would have, those people tell their friends in other cities and states, and they'd say, well, let's do that here. And I'll get a group of people. And then, it quickly grew. Within a year, we were doing it within 6 or 7 different cities.
Okay. And that was in-person cooking classes.
Yeah. So you're there, you're prepping all the ingredients. You're not necessarily cooking because there are freezer meals. So we're just putting raw ingredients together, chopping peppers, chopping carrots, adding, canned beans, and really seeing all the fresh ingredients that go into these meals, and that healthy can taste really good.
Oh, that's great. And now still today, you still provide the education, right? You provide the meals, but you also do meal prep classes.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. We have both. So we've always done the meal prep classes. And then obviously during COVID, that wasn't an option. And so then we started we'll prep them and bring them to you. And so we kind of have two different avenues of our business now.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure now kind of after post-COVID, I'm sure people love getting together again and doing these classes. Yeah, I can see how it's hard to put the education into that when you're just kind of having fun and. Yeah. So as far as Citrus Pear and putting fresh ingredients and shipping, right, there's been a lot of competitors in this space. I mean, look at Munchery, right? They've raised $100 million, valued at $300 million, and then shut their doors. Like, I don't know if people really appreciate how much work goes into this, but how are you handling all of the operations, and really what sets you guys apart from the HelloFresh, Blue Apron? There's a lot of frozen meal choices out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a crowded market with small margins for sure.
Right.
Our biggest thing that we really feel sets us apart is we have a team of 25 dietitians who will modify your meals for your needs. So whether you need low sodium or your child has epilepsy and needs a ketogenic diet, we'll do that for you.
Oh, so you're creating custom to the client. So you're not just hey, here are 40 meals, choose from these preset meals, go, like everybody else, right?
Well, so they do choose. We give them, options to choose from, but then we can tailor those to their needs. So if they have an allergy to soy or celiac, we do all we can to make those meals safe for that individual person.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. And I'm assuming as you grow, that'll be harder and harder to do that. That would be custom.
Yeah.
It's very custom work, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of great systems in place, but yeah, I mean, it definitely, we have to allow more time for our prep and our process that way. But what we found is those customers, patients who really need they value that more. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. So my son has an allergy and, to eggs. And then you realize that's pretty much in everything. And then you realize how important and valuable this can be, especially when it comes to meal prepping and ideas for different kinds of foods and getting the nutrients that you need. So I think that's a huge differentiator.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does it work, right, on an operational standpoint, right? When you hear all these big guys and the operations are really hard, how do you know how much fresh fruit to order? How do you know how many meals to put together? Is that kind of hard month to month? Like, how do you make sure the food is fresh?
Well, that is also kind of what sets ours apart is we don't make your food until you've ordered it. So we can forecast a little bit, but a lot of times we're not making ahead. So we don't hold on to a lot of inventory and are able to just turn it over quickly. So right now our process is we prepare your meals today and deliver them tomorrow.
Wow.
So they're very fresh.
Yeah, that's unbelievable that you guys have the operations to do that. And hopefully people can appreciate that, right? Because, for all of the potential customers of yours listening to this episode, right? I think it's really important to know, like, where do you get the ingredients? We can talk about that. Like, how do you source ingredients and how is it put together, and why should people be reaching out? So I think understanding these things from companies and having that transparency into how your food is made, I think is really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of, how do you guys source all of these ingredients?
So we just source locally. So for our classes, our meal prep classes, we partner with grocery stores in the area and we pull from their local sources. So a lot of their produce is coming in from the local farmers. And then for our delivery meals, we just pull from other local vendors that can bring in more bulk amounts.
Okay, got it. So is this pretty much just in Utah, or is this?
So we're in Utah, Idaho, Arizona, and Nevada.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So we're hoping we've got plans to expand. We're still working on that and different operations to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have facilities in each of these locations to be able to do the prep
and the prep and delivery?
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing because a lot of times people, I'm sure, the busy professionals who would do these kinds of frozen meals, it's sometimes they're not the ones ordering it until the last minute, right? So,
right. Yes.
Okay, no, we need this tomorrow. Thank you for not ordering ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what are some other things that you have noticed from the clients who are using Citrus Pear that you think is really a differentiator that you would like to share with our listeners?
I mean, the things that I hear that really, keep us going and are just like those success stories. Like we've had, people even send in their labs that are like, this is my cholesterol before I started Citrus Pear. And this is it after I've been eating it for like dinner and then lunch the next day or something. And then, or I've lost, this much weight since I started eating Citrus Pear. Or my blood sugars have improved. My hemoglobin A1C is now within range. We hear stories like that a lot. And that is, well, any healthcare professional, but for sure as a dietitian is your goal. Like that's just the cherry on top.
I can imagine. That is amazing. And do you think it's really the meals being delivered that's making the difference? Or do you think it's the education and the meal prepping and really empowering people to bring these ingredients together themselves that's making a difference? Or do you think it's both?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think they're two different customers, whether they're coming to the class or where they're having it delivered. But I think the common thread in it all is that they easy access to healthy foods, because everyone is so busy and everyone wants to, live that way and has great intentions. And whether it's they don't have time or it's overwhelming, this kind of just simplifies it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm somebody who uses Daily Harvest, right? So, and not on the food side, but more of the smoothies, right? Super easy to grab a smoothie for lunch. Is there anything that you can share with our listeners that you may want them to know when it comes to choosing the frozen meals, whether you're getting frozen meals from a grocery store or choosing between the delivery frozen meals? Is there something, what should consumers really be looking at to compare companies and the frozen meals themselves, especially for listeners who may have, right, type 2, I'm trying to lose weight, they have specific types of diets. I need low sodium.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, sodium is the big one in a lot of frozen meals when you go get those convenience meals. So yeah, that's the big one to watch. And then I would just
preservatives too, right?
Yes, sodium and preservatives. And then, I mean, obviously some of them are really calorie dense. So just kind of looking at that, are they providing like a well-rounded, like they have a vegetable and a whole grain and a protein? What kind of big picture are they providing? And then also, I know I've heard from a lot of people that the thing that they like about our meals is, I guess one thing I haven't mentioned, they are all cooked in the slow cooker or the pressure cooker. So once they get that food home, they don't have to do more prep. Like they just drop it in and it's ready for them at the end of the day. And so I think that's one thing that can make other types of meals difficult is they still have to prep them. And that's when if you're not planning ahead or you're short on time, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think that's Blue Apron, that you still have to put everything together. You have to pull the greens. I still have to cook at the end of the day, but it helps with the people who are like, I don't have time to go to the grocery store. So
or I don't know what to cook.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So very different audiences. That's true. But I guess from a standpoint, when you're looking at like, okay, I can go to the freezer section. It's so much cheaper. I'll just go to the grocery store and go to the freezer section and get one of those meals, which are really not cheap anymore. Everything's kind of expensive today. But, when you're in a hurry and you're like, okay, we'll just eat a frozen meal. I think it's true. When you start looking at the back of that package, it's scary sometimes what you find inside of these meals, right? So
so that's what I said, I think calories and sodium and then the preservatives are probably the biggest things that I would watch for.
And then sometimes the healthy stuff doesn't taste as good, if you're trying to eat that. So I assume with Citrus Pear that it's all fresh, probably organic. Even going, I don't know if it's organic or not, and definitely low sodium, probably all of them.
Yeah. We don't do organic at this point. It is something that we've been looking into. Obviously, that would be a much higher price point. So, but yeah, we do all low sodium ingredients and fresh hand trimmed meats and things like that. So,
yeah, no, that's incredible. Yeah, it's definitely easier to have everything that you can just drop into a crock pot. That makes it so much easier, especially. So how do people get in touch when they want to like customize their order? Is this like you order, then send you guys an email? Is that how it works?
So you order and you can specify, if you have special dietary needs on your order form. And then one of our dietitians reaches out, kind of clarifies like, these are the substitutions we're going to make. Does this sound like what you had in mind, or do you need more? And then go from there.
That's amazing. Well, and as far as it comes to like meal planning, are there any tips that you can share? I mean, you've been a dietitian for years. What can you share with our listeners that may be super helpful for us to know about meal planning? Meal planning and then meal prepping, right?
Yeah. Meal planning, I mean, I think for me, I guess for what's worked best for me is to do it like a week at a time. I know some people try to do longer, a month at a time. And for me, that just seems too overwhelming and too much to bite off at one point. So I like to do mine at a week at a time based on my schedule for that week, who's going to be home, how busy things are, and then just kind of shop for that week and prep for that week. But then also one thing that I feel like has been helpful for me lately is prepping like snacks and quick things to grab on the go has actually been a lot more helpful for me than having like a full prepped, dinner every day. That's one thing that's kind of changed lately, that I thought, okay, I'm just going to have like these high protein muffins or these like fruit and veggie bento boxes or something quick that I can grab in those times where you're short on time and your energy's dropping and it's easier to grab something convenient and not as good.
No, that's incredible. And I feel like it's a lot less overwhelming if you look at it in these things too. It's not like, oh, I've got to do a whole month of meal prepping, but I can just make some muffins and take with me in case I'm like starving and stuck in traffic or something.
Yes, exactly.
And what about meal prepping? Is this like, okay, take a whole day? Do you have any tips around this? Just grab a bunch of ingredients, like plan this out ahead of time. Like, what are some big takeaways you guys have had from these classes?
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of planning. I would say if you're just kind of going to the store and trying to pull things together quickly, you'll either waste a lot of ingredients that you don't end up using, or you'll be missing something. And then that's so frustrating, because then you're back at the store, or you don't end up completing the recipe because you didn't have what you needed. So for sure, planning ahead and then trying to prep things that have common ingredients. So like one thing that I like to do is like, if I know that I'm going to make a pot roast or something during the week, then I can repurpose that leftover meat for a sandwich later or something. So trying to use common ingredients that you can carry over to another meal. And then obviously freezing things is a huge help that I found. You can freeze a lot of things that I didn't know that you could, and that you can pull out later. And so that's another helpful tool.
Is there something that you learned about freezing foods? I mean, now that you're running frozen meal delivery, what frozen food were you like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have thought about that?
You can freeze like scrambled eggs, like raw eggs before you scramble them. I didn't know that.
You could freeze eggs.
Yeah, so you can like crack them all into a container. You could add, like turkey sausage and hash browns and have that all frozen.
Good.
And then cook it later.
Huh.
And then the other one that I didn't know is you can like batch cook rice and then freeze it in smaller portions in freezer bags. And then you can kind of poke holes in it and heat it up in the microwave, and it freshens right up and is fluffy.
Wow, that's amazing.
So those are my two ones that have been game changers.
Because I'm in, I have a 13-month-old, so it's all about, I do all of his meal prep, and I'm constantly freezing and doing all of his food, which makes it impossible for me to have time to do anything for myself. So, but storage containers, I'm really into glass right now, and I don't want to use plastics. Is there anything to that? Have you guys found anything? I know economically it makes a lot of sense to use plastic, but I really don't want to use freezer bags, all the plastics.
Yeah. Those reusable bags that are kind of like rubbery. I don't know if you've ever used those.
I have not used it.
Yeah, those are really good. And then I don't know if the glass ones you're using are the Pyrex. Do you use Pyrex dishes?
I have used them in a pinch, but they're specifically for baby food.
Gotcha, for the baby. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about baby food. That's a good question.
Yeah, so just to protect him, so not just being conscious of, how much plastics we're all exposed to. So if we start meal prepping, just for our listeners, it's just something to think about, right?
That is
plastics that we're using all the time, and
because most meal prep containers are plastic.
That's right.
Yeah,
mostly plastic. So we kind of started switching to all glass. So we do now have we started out with glass, shallow glass, and we're like, okay, that's a little bit hard and limiting. So then we went to bowls, so we can shove more in there. So anyway, if anybody has any containers that they love, by all means, reach out to me.
Share that.
Yeah, please share. because we're really trying to just be conscious of the plastics that we use. And I think meal prepping is amazing, but I didn't know if you had any storage techniques or
No, that's it. I need to research that one because my go-tos are plastic. So that's a great point.
Yeah. Mackenzie, is there anything else that we can talk about on the show that you want to mention to our listeners? Like, this is I think any tips that you have on meal planning, meal prepping that can help listeners at home who haven't joined one of your classes is huge. And I think it was a really interesting point, like, hey, what should they consider? Like, okay, next time you go to the grocery store, if you listen to this episode, now you know what to look for, and or you can go to Citrus Pear and order it. That's kind of the takeaway.
Yeah.
I want to get them to like, oh, well, this is cheap and easy and convenient. It's here, but at least put it in their heads like, well, now I'm looking at ingredients and I see like, or now I get a million HelloFresh brochures in the mail, but now I'm going to actually take a look and see, does this meet what I'm trying to do? That's my goal for the episode. So if there's anything else on these lanes, maybe we can talk about how to get started with freezer meal prep. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Okay.
For a minute.
Yeah. To get started with freezer meal prep, it's always tricky because there's a lot of recipes out there and you want to pick the good ones. So I would say test recipes first before you go and make a bunch because you want to make sure they're good and that you'll eat them. And then also trying to avoid like canned condensed soups and things like that. I know a lot of freezer meals and that go into your crock pot call for those. And those are really high in sodium and preservatives. And they are fine in a pinch, but I wouldn't rely on those regularly.
That's great to know.
Yeah. And then one thing that I really like when I'm making my freezer meals is it's nice to have like, let's say you're doing like a creamy Parmesan chicken or something like that. You want to have that creaminess, but if you're not wanting to use like heavy cream or half and half or anything like that, you can make the meal with broth and all the regular seasonings. And then after it's done cooking, I like to add like either low-fat cream cheese, Greek cream cheese, or sour cream or something like that gives it that creamy consistency, but is a lot healthier and lower in the fat and cholesterol.
Good to know. And I didn't realize that a lot of the freezer meals were even calling for the soups, those heavy soups. And
a lot do.
From can has a lot of the preservatives, right?
Yeah. Or like, a lot will call for like even, just like bottled teriyaki sauce and those are fine to use in, like I said, in a pinch. But I try not to have those in our everyday meals. So.
Okay. And let me ask you, how long do freezer meals last?
So that's a great question. We recommend to our customers to use them within 3 to 4 months just because they tend to get a little bit freezer burnt. But I mean, really, they're safe for up to a year. They're not going to be, if they've been stored properly, they are safe to have, but the quality usually
sometimes when you go into the freezer, I feel like a lot of times the flavor is going to be gone. That's probably not true. But
no, it is. The flavor definitely dissipates over time.
So definitely don't make so much. It's going to be in there forever.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good to know. Well, Mackenzie, thank you so much for showing up and sharing all of these insights into meal planning, meal prepping, and then into Citrus Pear and having the ability for people to order fresh, frozen foods. I think that is just great tips.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a question that we ask all the guests on the show, can you share 3 fundamental pillars that contribute to your well-being?
Yes. So number 1 for me is exercise. I have to have my regular exercise. I do struggle with, mental health, depression, and anxiety. And so that is really helpful for me. And then one thing that I liked that I kind of live by and preach with my diet is trying to think of what can I incorporate into my diet rather than what do I need to cut out? Because I think that's what can't I have? What do I need to stop having? And I like to think, well, what can I add to make it more either filling, nutrient dense, have more fiber? What can I add to it? And that natural evolution just kind of happens that, you're just making healthier choices. And then my third one is sleep. I really value my sleep. So trying to get a good night's rest each night. So
yeah, that's, I mean, very food, sleep, right? And exercise are a lot of people's top threes, which is, really incredible. And thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at, what do you need to add into your diet versus what do I have to take away? Because if you start adding things to your diet, you're not maybe going to be hungry if you start adding all of these other things to I can eat all of this. I just have to go through different aisles, maybe at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So it all comes back to meal planning, meal prepping.
Just kind of thinking ahead a little bit.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Which for busy people, we know it's hard. And in those times when you're super busy, if you're lucky enough to be in one of the states, you can always reach out to Citrus Pear for some healthy, fresh foods. Mackenzie, where can our listeners connect with you and how do they get in touch with Citrus Pear? Maybe do you guys have like a request for coming soon to different states? Do you have a request on your website?
Yeah. So you can always reach out to us through our website, just at citruspear.com. And then we are on Instagram, citrus_pear. So both of those locations, you can find us and get in touch. And yeah, we love to hear from people and where that's how we've grown, just by requests and organic growth. So
yeah. So if you're interested in having or come maybe get some friends together, start requesting some of our classes, and then maybe they'll show up in your state so you can actually get some of their food. And you also have a very special code for Sofia Health listeners. And right now we see that it's $10 off your first order with code Sofia Health, and that's just SOFIAHALTH. And we'll be sure to link the code and put all this information in the show notes. Mackenzie, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners today?
Well, just thanks for having me. And yeah, it's every dietitian's dream to give people food that they enjoy. So we're hoping to just keep spreading that around. So,
well, thank you for sharing this and for all the work that you do as a dietitian and your whole team of dietitians. That's incredible. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sofia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sofia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Reese. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.